Hello there. So we just got the third episode of Obi-Wan Kenobi, and it was awesome. So let's talk about it. So we start out this episode, and we have Obi-Wan trying to connect to Qui-Gon's Force Ghost again, and he still hasn't been able to yet, but that leads me to believe somewhere down the line on this show, we're going to see Qui-Gon's Force Ghost, and that's going to be so awesome to see Qui-Gon again. I can't wait. That's going to be so awesome when that happens, but they keep kind of teasing that, and so that kind of, again, it seems like that's where we're going with things. At some point, we will see Qui-Gon, Qui-Gon's Force Ghost, and very excited to see that when it happens. But then we start to hear some quotes from the prequels. We hear Qui-Gon telling Obi-Wan to promise to train Anakin. We hear Yoda saying something. Anakin, we hear some of his lines from the battle on Mustafar. And intercut with this, with seeing Obi-Wan kind of hearing those voices, we see Darth Vader suiting up, which that was so awesome. I was kind of nervous with the ending of the last episode if they were really going to show Darth Vader this episode or not, if they were just gonna kind of show him maybe a little bit, but then, kind of move away from it, just kind of say, okay, here he is, we're gonna have him, but we're not giving you everything with him just yet. And I was definitely pleasantly surprised with the amount he was in this episode. They definitely did not shy away from using Darth Vader. They definitely used him a lot more than I thought they were going to. They used him the amount I was hoping they would, but definitely not the amount that I was expecting them to. And so that was just so awesome. The amount of Darth Vader we got to see in this episode, and some crazy moments, some dark Darth Vader moments, which I'll get to later, but so awesome. We got to see Darth Vader here. We see him talking to the third sister, who for some reason I called sixth sister in my previous video, in my first episode review. Sorry, it didn't make sense to me how, it just made more sense in my mind that the sixth sister would be seen as lesser. Like, it just didn't make as much sense to me for the third sister to be, like, the one that everybody's like, oh, you're the least of us. Like, she's the third sister. Like, I guess, like, the order of, third sister, fifth brother, whatever, like, I guess the numbers there don't equate to, like, level on, like, the hierarchy of it. It just probably just means, like, when they joined, but it seems it just made more sense to me. Sixth sister farther down the line, everybody's not as fond of her. She's lower on the list as the sixth instead of the third. So, but yeah, she is third sister, and we see Darth Vader talking to her. He offers her the role of Grand Inquisitor if she can bring him Obi-Wan, and if she fails, she will not live to regret it. And so, kinda giving her everything to gain and everything to lose if she does not bring in Obi-Wan Kenobi. And so I think that was a good way of kinda setting the stakes for her character. Although it seems like she had some stakes before, maybe he had already given her those kind of stakes prior of some sort, but we definitely see she has a lot of stakes in getting Obi-Wan Kenobi. And so I will say, I'm not sure what they're doing with the Grand Inquisitor, because it seems like he's just dead. And that's definitely disappointing, and it's definitely weird because, again, as I said in my previous review, he's in Star Wars Rebels, so he can't be dead. So I don't know if maybe, like, this isn't the Grand Inquisitor that we see in Rebels. Like, maybe somebody else comes in and they become the Grand Inquisitor. I've seen, like, that thought kind of presented by some people. Like, maybe they were kind of tricking us and the Grand Inquisitor we saw at the start of the show isn't the same one we see moving forward, and maybe as the show progresses, we see that one come into play and become the new Grand Inquisitor. It just seems to me it's just a really weird move to, like, trick us into thinking this is the Grand Inquisitor that we know, especially having him have, like, the stuff on like, the top of his head, on his forehead, that is the same stuff that the Grand Inquisitor we know has. Maybe that's just, like, what the Grand Inquisitor, no, maybe it's, like, the head tattoo, whatever, I don't know what it actually is, but, like, maybe that's just what every Grand Inquisitor has. Like, that's not maybe a marking for, like, him specifically. It's just, if you're the Grand Inquisitor, you get those markings. So, maybe that's how they're going to explain that. It just seems to me, that just seems really weird to trick us into thinking this person is the Grand Inquisitor we know, and then killing him off, and have to explain how a new Grand Inquisitor comes into power that's not the third sister, because we obviously know the third sister doesn't become the Grand Inquisitor. So somebody else has to come into play. For some reason, the fifth brother thinks he's going to be the new Grand Inquisitor. Also, yeah, like, who is, like, why is this person now going to become, like, how are they going to explain this new person coming in and becoming the Grand Inquisitor all of a sudden? If this does end up being how this plays out, like, it would just have to be a completely new person, unless it's, like, the second brother. I don't know. It just doesn't really make that much sense to me why they would do this that way, but I guess that's how it's going to have to end up, unless somehow they explain the Grand Inquisitor survived. Maybe they bring him back to life. I mean, they brought back Darth Maul. They brought back a bunch of other characters that seem to have died, so who knows? Who knows what they're going to do? It just seems like a really weird choice. But, anyway, then we have a conversation between Obi-Wan and Leia, where Obi-Wan kind of describes what the feeling of the Force is to her. He explains kind of how it's like, if you're afraid of the dark and then turn on the light, you feel safe, and that's kind of how the Force feels, which I thought that was a cool moment, to kind of have him explaining the Force. We kind of have two conversations in this episode, this one, and then the later one when he's talking about his parents, that I was very surprised about, that I think were kind of cool, kind of looks into his character and his connection to the Force and the Jedi and his past. I think those two conversations kind of were, I think, very interesting. So obviously later on in this episode, they have him talking to Leia, talking about how he was taken away from his parents. He's saying, like, he has glimpses of his mother's shawl, his father's hands, and I was really surprised about that. I was like, that is so interesting. We've never seen, like, Obi-Wan talk about his parents before, and we haven't really seen many Jedi talk about, like, their experience being taken from their parents at a young age and having their memories of them. The only ones we've really known about is, like, Anakin. Obviously we knew he was taken from his mother, so that's the only Jedi we've kind of have a, connection to their parents shown to us. But nobody else, was kind of just like, yeah, they were taken from their parents. That's how the Jedi work. Never really had anybody talk about their parents in that way before. And so I thought that was very interesting, to kind of see that, that idea explored. Because I think there is interesting stuff to be explored with, like, the Jedis being taken away from their parents and, like, how that affects them. And he does say that he had a brother. He remembers a baby, so he thinks he has a brother. I wonder if that's going to come into play at some point. That would be interesting, to see Obi-Wan Kenobi's brother somehow come into play. I think it would have been very interesting if they had his brother be Rey's grandfather or something. That would have been an interesting way to have things play out, but of course, they did not do that. They went the Palpatine route. Again, I'm not going to go into much detail about the Rey stuff, but I think they could have done so much more than just making her a Palpatine all of a sudden. I think there was a lot more interesting ways to go about it, and I think having Obi-Wan's brother maybe be who she's a descendant from, that could be interesting. Anyway, though, I think that conversation was overall very interesting. But jumping back to, they arrive on this planet, and they're going to where Haja had said in the previous episode, where they're supposed to meet this person that's going to help them out. So they're walking to that. We get this moment where Obi-Wan looks off into the distance and he sees Anakin. He sees kind of just like a vision of Anakin standing there. And at first, I didn't realize it was Anakin. I was kind of like, who is that? Why is he seeing a person? Wait, why was he not there? And then I looked at it on a computer screen later, and I saw, oh, it is Hayden Christensen standing there. Which I don't know if that was just me being an idiot and not realizing that it was Anakin. That definitely makes sense. I definitely think there's a little bit of it that was like, he's a hooded figure, you didn't get to see his face that well, so I don't think I can be the only one who didn't realize that was Anakin at first. But, yeah, so he sees Anakin kind of showing kind of his kind of feeling of, like, failing Anakin, and, like, kind of all of, like, the finding out Anakin's still alive, how, like, that is affecting him. But they get to the place where they're supposed to meet this person, and Obi-Wan is getting very impatient. He's like, they're supposed to be here. And Leia's like, okay, maybe there's running late. And Obi-Wan's like, well, maybe there's nobody coming here. He's very, very not trusting and very cynical in this show. But, so he's very impatient. He's like, okay, maybe there's nobody coming. And so Leia sees somebody driving by, and she's like, let's ask them for help. And so she gets the person to stop. She introduces herself, explains what their situation is, or at least fabricates a situation to tell him. She tells Obi-Wan to say hello. He says hello. I think that was a missed opportunity for him to say hello there, but whatever. Hopefully he says hello there at some point in the show, but I think this was a perfect opportunity. They could have done it, but they did not. Anyway, they board the vehicle, and as Obi-Wan is boarding, he sees, the Empire symbol on the back of the vehicle, and so this guy is an Empire supporter. So as they're driving, some stormtroopers hop on because their transport is late or something, and so our driver Freck is like, okay, I'll drive you to wherever you're trying to go. And so this creates some tension there as these stormtroopers are looking for a Jedi. They're looking for Obi-Wan. And obviously there's tension of the people who are after them being in the same vehicle as them, and so they have to kind of explain their way out of that. And so they create this whole scenario of why they came to this planet, explaining this whole scenario where Obi-Wan is her father, and he was wanting to take her to where he met her mother for the first time, and her mother has died since, and he ends up calling her Leia, which they had introduced her as Luma before, and so the stormtroopers were like, hey, you called her Leia, and immediately I was like, say that was her mother's name, and you get confused. That's a thing people do all the time. They will call somebody by their mother's or father's name because they remind them of them. That's something that could happen, and so they do that. That's how they explained it away, and I was like, good job, guys. You explained it exactly how I thought to explain it, so I think that was a very good way to get out of that. And I think it was also cool because you were able to have this moment where Obi-Wan is saying, oh, when he looks at Leia, he sees her mother's face. And to the stormtroopers, it's like, okay, he's seeing his wife's face. She died, she reminds her of him. And to us, we're like, oh, this isn't just like a fake thing. Like, this has a double meaning because he's actually, when he looks at her, he sees Padme. And I think that was a cool way. That's definitely an interesting kind of thing that they keep doing in these episodes, is showing, like, he reminds her of Padme. And so I think that's interesting. And they end up having a conversation, Obi-Wan and Leia, saying, after the stormtroopers get off the vehicle, obviously they are talking about, she says, oh, you've been hiding something from me. You knew my parents, didn't you? And she says she often tries to remember what her parents were like. And this is how we end up getting into the conversation with Obi-Wan saying that, he was taken from his parents at a young age as a Jedi, and he talking about his parents and stuff. Then we get stopped by these stormtroopers who have to inspect the vehicle. They tell them to get out. This probe that the third sister had sent up comes, and they're IDing Obi-Wan, and they see, oh no, it is Obi-Wan, and at the moment he pulls out his blaster, shoots the probe. You get into a fight with all the stormtroopers, with him shooting them. That was a nice little fight sequence there. Obi-Wan's still using his blaster, not his lightsaber just yet. And that was kind of cool. They end up escaping, but then another Imperial vehicle pulls up. Stormtroopers get out, tell them to get on the ground. They're about to shoot them, but then one of the Imperial officers shoots all of the stormtroopers, and we find out this is the person they were trying to meet before, and she helps them escape. She's like, okay, we have this ship. It's scheduled to leave in a few hours. We're going to go into this safe house until then. So she takes them into this safe house, and they're about to go through this tunnel to the ship because they found out that the Imperial, that there's some stormtroopers, the Empire has found out about them, and so they got to go to the ship sooner. And then Obi-Wan feels something. He senses something. He looks out the window, and Darth Vader's here. And we see some dark moments with him. He force chokes some guy. He snaps the guy's neck. He's force pulling somebody across the ground. And so Obi-Wan runs out. He's going to lead them away from Leia and Tala, I think was her name. And so he runs out. He runs away, gets Darth Vader to follow him. And then we see Darth Vader ignites his lightsaber. And Obi-Wan pulls out his. And I'm like, come on, do it. Ignite it. Turn on the lightsaber. We gotta have this battle. But then he puts it away and runs off. And I'm like, oh no. Or they're not gonna do it. But then, a second later, he ignites it. And I'm like, oh man. He finally did it. He finally ignited his lightsaber. It's the first time in this series we've seen Obi-Wan ignite his lightsaber. And I was like, okay, this is awesome. We're gonna get into it, aren't we? And Darth Vader walks up. And I'm like, okay, we're gonna have the battle now. But then he turns the lightsaber off, runs away again, and I'm like, oh man, are we not going to get the duel? Are we not going to get a duel this episode? But then we finally get it, and it was awesome. I'm honestly, I'm so happy that we got a duel. I don't think this is the duel from this show. I don't think this is the one that they've been talking about. I think we're going to get another one in the finale, probably, but this was definitely cool as, like, the first duel. I do find it a bit weird that, like, they have the Inquisitors, like, they didn't have a duel before this. Like, I don't know, I just find it weird that the first duel of this series was Obi-Wan versus Darth Vader. That seems like the big duel that you save for later, and you do Obi-Wan versus an Inquisitor first. I think that would have made more sense. Even have some other Jedi versus an Inquisitor first. Like, it seemed weird to have the first duel of this series be Obi-Wan versus Darth Vader, the big one. Not, obviously, I don't think it's going to be the big one. I think we're going to have, obviously, an Obi-Wan versus Darth Vader duel later on. It's going to be the duel, the rematch they've been talking about with the show. But, yeah, it just seemed a bit weird. They could have had an Obi-Wan versus Inquisitor fight, Obi-Wan versus the third sister at some point before this. Like, I think they should have had one last episode, when the third sister was looking for Obi-Wan as they were going to try to get onto the cargo ship. I think they could have had a fight there. I think that would have been really cool to have that be the first lightsaber duel. Have it be Obi-Wan versus the third sister. I don't know. They both, she had her lightsaber on. Obi-Wan had pulled out his lightsaber. It seemed like they were going to have a duel, but they didn't. Yeah, it definitely seemed a bit weird that they didn't have one there, and then the first duel that we get is Obi-Wan versus Darth Vader. Again, I'm not complaining, because, like, come on, we got the best thing first, or we got, like, a really awesome thing first. I don't think it's going to be the best thing. That would be kind of disappointing if this is the best duel of this series, is this one, but, we got the fun thing, the awesome thing first that we all wanted. We all wanted an Obi-Wan versus Darth Vader fight, and so it's cool that we got that one as the first duel. But again, it's a bit weird they didn't, have an Obi-Wan versus an Inquisitor fight first. Anyway, though, they have a duel. It's really awesome, and we get to this moment where Obi-Wan starts a big fire between them, pulls picks everyone up with the Force, drops him into the fire, and you're like, oh man, he's getting revenge for Mustafar, isn't he? Okay. And so he leaves him in there for a while. He pulls him out, and then he says to the stormtroopers, okay, go get him. But meanwhile, we've had Tala was taking Leia to the ship, but she decides to go back to get Obi-Wan, and Leia goes off on her own. So Tala is here now. She shoots one of the stormtroopers. She shoots the fire, ignites it again, and she goes down, gets Obi-Wan. I guess the loader droid goes down and gets Obi-Wan, saves him from that, and Darth Vader's stormtroopers leave. I guess we'll see him again later in the show. And also, meanwhile, as this was all happening, Third Sister finds the safe house, finds the tunnel to the ship, and she ends up getting ahead of Leia. And so when Leia gets to the ship, almost gets to the ship, Third Sister's there. She's like, I'll take you from here. And we see the pilot that was supposed to be there is dead, and Leia is now going with the Third Sister. That's where the episode ends. I really, really enjoyed this episode. I think if anybody was disappointed with the first two episodes, this one definitely made up for it. If there was anybody that saw those and were like, I'm gonna skip on this one, maybe I'll watch it later, they definitely missed out on this episode. This is where I think the show, it's definitely taken off. I think just the moment where we get Obi-Wan versus Darth Vader, that was where I was like, okay, they're doing it. This is awesome. They are not shying away from doing some awesome stuff. They had to do the setup with the first two episodes. It was a little bit slow. It was a little bit like, okay, we didn't get a lightsaber fight. What's happening here? This is kind of, it's kind of slow. It's, it's not boring, but it's like, it's not that much going on. And then you get this episode where there was a lot going on. And of course, again, we get Obi-Wan versus Darth Vader. Awesome. Again, I don't think it's the duel for this series. I think we're going to get another one down the line, probably in the finale. But it's so cool. We got something. And, so awesome to see them face again. I feel like this is probably something I've thought of before watching Revenge of the Sith. I feel like at some point I've been like, it'd be really cool to see this Obi-Wan, Ewan McGregor's Obi-Wan, go up against Darth Vader. Obviously we see Obi-Wan versus Vader in A New Hope, but that's a terrible fight, and it's the first lightsaber fight. It isn't really that well choreographed. It's two old guys poking each other with light sticks. It's not that great. So I'm like, it would be really cool to see this Obi-Wan versus Darth Vader, to see a really proper Obi-Wan versus Darth Vader fight. And I feel like that's probably been something I've thought of before, and I think it's so cool that we got it here, and I assume we're going to get another one down the line as the big duel that they're talking about with the show. The duel between Obi-Wan versus Darth Vader. Very excited for whenever that happens, probably in the finale again. But yeah, this episode just was really good. Other than Obi-Wan versus Darth Vader, again, I think the conversation between Obi-Wan and Leia about his past, his family, was really good. I think that was, again, an interesting look into Obi-Wan's past that we haven't, seen before. We've never heard him talk about his parents before. And so that was very interesting to, see that look into his character, a new look into his character that we haven't seen before. I'm really enjoying this show. Again, this episode definitely was the one where it popped off, and I'm so excited to see where this is going to go next. Leia is now captured, or with the Third Sister, and so it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. I guess Obi-Wan's going to have to save her once again. I assume next episode will be Tala will bring Obi-Wan to Jabim, wherever they were going, and so he'll be there. We'll see whatever is happening with that. Maybe we'll see the Jedi, the younglings that had escaped at the beginning of the first episode. Maybe that's where they are, and that's how that'll come back into play. I assume that episode will be mostly spent there, with probably cutting to Leia being captured by the Third Sister, and stuff with that, and then it'll probably end with Obi-Wan saying, all right, I'm going to go off. I'm going to save Leia. Very excited for where this show is going, what's going to happen next. And yeah, I'm really enjoying this show, and this episode I thought was amazing. Much better than the first two. And just, again, we got Obi-Wan versus Darth Vader. What more can you ask for? So, those are my thoughts on episode 3 of Obi-Wan Kenobi. Please comment below yours, and remember to give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and maybe check out some of my other videos. And with that said, that's a wrap.